I'm a partner at Think Hospitality. We are food and beverage partners for owners, operators, investors, developers. What we like to do is problem statement solving, we call it, because people come to us with all kinds of issues in F&B. This is going to touch maybe a little bit on F&B because this is the lifestyle and experience economy panel. We had a beautiful quote just backstage by George Bernard Shaw, which I think is quite an interesting segue into this. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. This could be, I think, a statement for one of the lifestyle brands for sure. So let's start with some very quick introductions. Navneet, let's start with you. Quick introduction to yourself and
I thought you said no ads.
Maybe not everything about your 30-plus career in hospitality, but a quick snapshot.
Okay, quick snapshot. So I run a new business called Live-In Hotels, which is in the lifestyle budget category. We started one hotel in Frankfurt, which I bought from my previous company, Meininger, and it's an idea to go into the space, which we talk about lifestyle, and now we want to expand it across Europe and the UK. And the idea is to have about 14 or 15 hotels in the next 5 years. With a very strong management team. We have a good technology partner, Muse, actually. We use them, and technology is at the heart of this. But at the same time, it's also about creating very valuable returns for investors. And what I focus a lot on is return on square meter, which I've been advocating with Russell, who's in the audience somewhere, all the time, saying that's what we should measure. And basically, the model is focused on. It's a flexible model. We can talk about that later, but it basically delivers a higher revenue per square meter than its competition.
Fantastic. Keith.
Hi there. Good morning. Keith Evans, LHC Group. We are a private equity business, but focused broadly on lifestyle hospitality, which we'll touch on a bit today, and kind of where it intersects with operational real estate. So we do work in that world of real estate, brands, management and different combinations thereof. Some of our strategies are integrated platforms where we own all the real estate, technology, brand infrastructure, and management infrastructure, and then scale that. And some of them are more brand or tech oriented, and some of them are more real estate oriented strategies. We're investing currently actively across Europe and the US. So we'll touch on some more.
Fantastic. Chris?
Chris Tarrant from BVA BDRC, and just confirming that Andrew's putting together mixed panels. I'm very different from the other two panelists. I'm representing a customer insight group. I've been working for clients in the hotel sector. Unfortunately, I'm now in my 4th decade of doing this. So I've seen a lot of trends come and go. And on the subject of lifestyle, I mean, we'll be talking about what is a lifestyle brand, and I think they go back a very long way. But very much what I'm doing is bringing the guest, the customer, into the piece, which I think is particularly relevant when we're looking at lifestyle brands.
Absolutely. Before we get into the questions, I have a quick fire round to each of you. I usually do this on my panels. You haven't been briefed on this. No. Keith, true or false? Lifestyle hotels are still an attractive investment in 2025.
True.
Navneet, yes or no? A hotel can be authentic even if it's part of a global chain.
Yes.
And Chris, what is a bigger loyalty driver, price or experience?
Experience.
Well, that's a right one for the panel.
Did you get the answers right?
There is no right or wrong. There is just what you said to get us into the questions. I just came back last night from Frankfurt from another event, and there was a lifestyle brand, smaller one, I'm not going to name it, and they had this role they had created called the Ambassador of Buzz. It's essentially your event manager or your community manager. So I thought, coming up with all kinds of interesting stuff in this lifestyle segment, aren't we? So the Ambassador of Buzz, keep that in mind. So let's start with, first of all, sort of defining what we call lifestyle hospitality, lifestyle sector. What is it and what is it not? Because I think maybe that's an easier way to define it. Keith, I think you said you have a bit of a eureka moment on the definition.
Well, on this question, which I get often, I was thinking about that briefly for 2 minutes over coffee this morning, and actually the frustration of this question was bubbling up. And then it came to me that Actually, I think the more you define lifestyle, the less it's lifestyle, right? I think that's the starting point. I actually think the more that we're using rule books and we're using frameworks to define what lifestyle is in the context of hospitality and beyond hospitality, the more it's not, right? And so I think it's actually a creative process. I actually think it's a creative process which touches on a lot of different variables, which entrepreneurs, founders, creatives, innovators utilize to express themselves in the context of hospitality, which is what we're talking about today. So then you can go down the list of the variables that are at play, right, which is what people are using to define lifestyle these days. But, I think there's a lot of interesting variables at play, right? So, design, food and beverage, art, music, culture, community, purpose. These are all words that are thrown around. They don't mean anything unless the person who's putting it to work is doing it, from a fundamental way. It's a way they express themselves. It's a way they create those experiences, those products, and those hotels. I know it's a slightly philosophical answer, but I think that's more the way I feel about it than defining it strictly.
And it's coming back to you, Chris, but I think it's really interesting. It's coming from you, Keith, because you're the one with the investor hat here mostly on. So that we'll come back to it. But Chris, go on.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, what you're saying, there's a DNA that applies to one of these things in that, at a very broad level, you could say every single hotel everywhere is a lifestyle property because it's meeting a particular need of a particular guest segment. But I think we understand here when we're talking about lifestyle, you've used that creative force concept, which that's a driver behind what creates what is seen as a lifestyle brand. When I look at it from the point of view of the guest, the key component they're looking for is authenticity. So you're creating an experience that is different from what might be a functional stay. So what need state for the guest are you satisfying? And we know it's not cookie cutter, which is where it may be a functional need, I need a bed for the night. When we come to lifestyle, it's an emotional connection that you're making with the guest, so you're delivering them a benefit that is beyond just the functional stay. And often in that case, what it means is I'm staying in the hotel not just because it's convenient for where I'm going to, but the hotel is part of why I'm here, so that it is a key component of the experience I'm looking for from this trip.
Navneet, what's your definition?
Yeah, I think what it is not is easy to determine, particularly in the economy sector which we are in. I look at let's say compare it with, say, McDonald's or buying a bottle of beer. I mean, now the experience you want is something authentic and maybe local, then you wouldn't buy a typical Heineken. You'd want a local beer if you want to go to, or books. If you're going to buy a book, would you buy from Amazon? Would you go to a local bookseller if you're visiting a town? So it's a bit of authenticity in terms of localization that comes with it. But the key thing is the customer is the heart of it. It's not product-centered, but experience-centered. And there's a lot of local experience there. But the heart of it also, and that's what I find, how you can scale it is the key issue. You can do it one-off, but can you scale it? And therefore, the DNA inside has to be operationally very efficient. And therefore, it's probably very similar inside. But the experience the customer gets, particularly with how you design the public spaces, the experiences that they get, is very local. And they feel that they are coming to a place, if it's in London, it's a London experience. If it's Frankfurt, it's a Frankfurt experience. And that's what you have to deliver, the localization. But at the same time, in order to scale it, you still have to have the ability to make it efficient, so the product has some inherent elements which are scalable as well. Otherwise, you won't be able to grow it. And I think that's a challenge for lifestyle products. How do you do it? And that's what we're trying to do.
So if you just play with two words there, right? So the authenticity popped up twice, scale popped up twice, I think. I don't know, I was thinking about this morning as well. I think there is, in a way, I kind of see there's three phases to creation of a lifestyle brand or concept, right? There's kind of the innovation phase, which is kind of pretty founder-driven, strong DNA, pretty much a blank canvas, right? No commoditization, no rule book, Just really, there's an artistic element to that process. And then that's kind of that, and then there's a proof of concept along the way there. And then I feel like it goes into a second phase, which is kind of optimization phase. And that optimization also connects to this kind of certain phase of scale. Right? 'Cause you're almost going from a certain level of scale along this path. And when you're in optimization, there's still a lot of space for your creativity. Right? So you've kind of got like a blank canvas, now you have a sketch. Right? And on that sketch, you've got a rough outline of what this thing is. But there's still 50%, let's say, flexibility. I'm just putting a number out there, you know, just to put it into context. I'm trying to put lifestyle into a framework right now, right? And still, but there's still a lot of artistic creativity going on there. The rule book is not written, but it's on its journey, right? It's maturing. And then I feel like there's this third phase, which is this kind of more, it is what it is, right? Industrialization, commoditization, and mass scale. Right? Now, not all of these brands or concepts go all the way through that journey, and but we know as you get into the third bucket, that space for creativity is squeezed to 10%, which often focused on some localization. Mm-hmm. That localization generally comes with a rule book, so that rule book is that 10% flex is actually already has a rule book attached to it. So you're really squeezing out. You're getting other benefits. You're getting that scale, standardization, profit. It's all working into the large machine, and that's also how M&A and consolidation works. But the further you go down this journey, the more difficult it is to be authentic, if you know what I'm saying.
And that's actually kind of took my question away, which was, I heard the scale of authenticity, like can you scale authenticity? Is it still authentic? I mean, you, Keith, were involved with the whole Ennismore Accor journey. What was the learning from that? Because that's a good example to talk about.
Well, I don't represent any of those companies at this stage, but what I can say is when we were designing the Ennismore 2.0, let's say, which was bringing together the original Ennismore, which was broadly the Hoxton brand, together with, you know, several other independent, founder-driven lifestyle management businesses and brands around the world. During that process of designing that 2.0, there was a lot of care and effort put into kind of protecting that DNA and protecting as much of that creative space as could be protected. Because you went from, the scale was quite different. We went from, let's say, 1.0, 15 hotels, management contracts, however you want to look at it, with one brand effectively, to whatever the number was, 200 hotels and 16 brands. I'm not sure exactly the numbers. So we tried to design in a way, and I just came up with this kind of three-phase thing this morning over a coffee, but it feels like on this framework I was just using, we were trying to fit a relatively large business into that optimization phase, that second phase. So there was a lot of care put into how it was designed for the 2.0. A lot of founders were still actively involved. Not all founders, but some founders. There was a degree of separation between Accor, the controlling shareholder, and Ennismore as a management company. But they would be better placed to answer specifics. But there was a great deal of care put into that design. Where it went from there is better for Ennismore and Accor to comment on.
Thanks, Keith, for that. I want to come back to the whole founders piece and to you, Navneet, but first I want to look and bring the customer back into the center. So, Chris, question to you here. What consumers say that they want can be quite different from what they actually want, because many times they say, we want to eat, we see this in F&B all the time, we want to eat healthy, yet burgers and pizza are the number one sellers on items of menu, and then they complain that there's not enough sort of variety. So how can brands go about it to understand what their customers are actually needing, what they want, how to build a product around that?
It's a challenge, because when you're looking at a brand, it's not a product. I mean, It's really important to make that distinction. And I think some people think they can come into this or any other space, and by putting together a product playbook, you can create something. That's not a brand. A brand is an emotional connection with the customer. And while I completely understand where Keith is coming from in terms of founder brands, I actually do believe you can create a lifestyle brand without having that pivotal founder. Some of the big brands have been doing that. We track those in the studies that we have. So There are some which, if you're a lifestyle brand dyed in the wool, you say it's a corporate's attempt at it. But from the customer point of view, they react positively to it. And I mean, an example I would give would be IHG's Hotel Indigo, which from the consumer perspective ticks some boxes that a Holiday Inn, for example, does not. So it is about creating that connection with them. And a really important thing for a lifestyle brand, we haven't come on to it yet, is the question about what is the ROI, because often there can be a higher level of cost. Well, therefore, you need a better return. And what we see from consumers is we've done research across multiple sectors, not just hospitality. We have what we call the EPIC model for a brand. The E of it being elevation, which is where you go beyond the routine and the expected. And this is why this really applies to the lifestyle sector. P is for pride, and that's both from the employees and for your guests, and making them feel special and unique. I, and this is actually a difficult one, an important one, is insight. And that's where you talk about being in neighborhoods, so you can share knowledge of the neighborhood. You as the brand can provide information. The guest gains something when they come to stay with you. And then the C is connection, which is the overall emotional bond that you provide to tie in to the brand. And multiple studies, if brands score highly on elevation, pride, insight and connection, then their overall performance is stronger. And I'm talking both about customer survey measures to do with Net Promoter Score, that type of, these are key drivers of that, but we also see it in terms of guest perception about brand premium. So we have a brand margin methodology that asks guests how much they believe a certain brand would be worth above an unbranded hotel in the same location with equivalent facilities. And most of the lifestyle brands tend to be upper full service. That's where there are more of them. Because you could say once you get to luxury, it all merges into one. And they already are differentiated. But in upper full service, I've looked at the data for Hoxton, Malmaison, Hotel de Vin, Hard Rock, Radisson Red, and another one which escapes me. But half a dozen brands looked at customer perceptions as to how much people would pay to stay at them. And as a group, they command a 10% premium over the upper full service tier average. So they are delivering an ROI, which I think is a really important component that it's worth getting into, because we know there are costs attached to getting into the lifestyle segment, but we're seeing guests are saying they are willing to pay a premium for it.
And Navneet, is that something you're seeing with your product as well?
Yeah, I think the customer is the heart of it, and what we found in our segment is that what customers wanted, and that's I think the lifestyle aspect, is they want connections. You mentioned the word connectivity. Not only with connecting with the local community or the local space, but also connecting with each other, particularly in our segment. So we have a hostel-hotel hybrid, so people want to meet other guests, right? You have shared rooms as well as private rooms. So it enables us to design the product around that, but also the communal areas are designed so that they connect with each other, but also they can connect with the local community and get the local community to come in as well, right? Whether it's an event or a bar or wherever you create those communal spaces. So I think the connectivity side is very important, and that's, I think, where the lifestyle element comes in. It's not just a cookie cutter approach. You go there and you've got a simple. That works, of course. I mean, if you go to a Premier Inn, that's what you get, and you pay for that, and it's a wonderful model. But ours is different. And I think in terms of the performance we've found, and I think I agree with you, it probably produce a higher RGI, at least in the case of our hotel that we opened in Frankfurt, about 15% higher than the market in terms of RGI in our first full year of operation. So that's real evidence. That's a number that you can live with, and investors like that. I like that. But that's proof of the pudding, that you actually get a higher return.
And actually, follow-up question on that. So how do you prove ROI on the more experiential elements, like, F&B being one, the programming, the events? How do you go about that?
Well, I'll answer that as well. I think the at the end of the day, from a real estate investment perspective, it's really that yield on cost. I mean, you can talk about a lot of different other variables at play, but the yield on cost is ultimately probably the most important variable to test your financial and operational performance of your investment, right? And on the CapEx and design side, probably on balance, within the variety of segments that there are in our industry now, you probably have a little bit of an incremental spend on the lifestyle space. But the way we look at it, and I think quite a few others as well, is that you kind of heat map the properties, right? So I would say the positive of the lifestyle space is that you don't have all of the long list of standardization of products, which gives you creativity to work with different materials that sometimes are less expensive than some of the standardized products. But then when you apply kind of a heat map approach, right, you're going to over-index spend, fit out, design quality in areas that are either really enhancing that experience, so public areas, or other places where you think you're getting the best bang for the buck, right? So there's two elements at play there. And then in terms of kind of most importantly is profitability, obviously, per square meter. I think on the revenue side, I mean, from all the numbers we've looked at, we kind of see in the ballpark of kind of 20-30% premium per square meter, which is on the upper end. So I'm not saying that all properties will exhibit that differential. It doesn't necessarily drop down at the same ratio to profit because some of that incremental revenues are in the food and beverage, obviously have a lower margin. So you do have to be careful when ultimately you're driving your yield to cost as a key metric for your investments and the differential versus your different options, your operating and your branding options for the real estate. It's just something you have to be very, very conscious of and very careful. Now, a lot of people that are creating brands end up, it's so important that the ownership of the real estate and the ownership of the brand are actually really well aligned. Certainly as you're going through this initial two phases, if you will, innovation and optimization, especially in innovation side, but I would say over both of those phases, because if not, what you end up having is overspend on the real estate because of the vision of what the brand should be or wants to be. And then there's an imbalance of allocation of capital. And if you don't have the right alignment, then it brings up some conflicts, right? So I think that's why it's also unique, and I think quite well, if you look at a platform strategy where all the real estate, brands, tech, everything is in one box, there's perfect alignment on how you allocate those resources because you don't have a different shareholder base split between the two. So that piece is really important because you do see that being a mistake that's made sometimes where there's some overspend applied to projects because of the brand vision that were disjointed.
Exactly.
So yeah, just a few things there to highlight.
I see we're in the red for time, so Andrew, maybe we have a question or two from the audience. We got to maybe like 10% of our pre-questions. We haven't talked about culture, the founder's dilemma, technology, but let's get a question or two from the audience. I see a show of hands. Amazing.
I've got a question, if nobody has one. Just in terms of the lifestyle concept, and I really liked, Keith, when you were talking about yield on cost. When I look at it, it seems to me that there's always been a struggle in terms of delivering this at the economy end in the chain scale segments. So I looked at something like Indigo, which we've referenced. That was initially planned as a mid-market, and they pushed it upscale, didn't they? Can we ever get an economy lifestyle product?
That's a very good question. We're testing it right now. We may create something in that space. So it's not easy, right? I think one of the drivers I would imagine, having looked at several models, is ultimately a couple things. One, relatively limited public area space, right? Because you need to really build into bringing the neighborhood in, if you know what I mean. Really having hero barbers and bakeries and cocktail specialists, like really bring that experience out of the building, which is its own process of programming. And then you have to be very size efficient on the room side. So it's, and then finding that balance, then what is left? So what are you actually delivering that's in this broad definition of lifestyle that's still a differentiator from the other economy concepts? So it's a tricky one. We're looking at it now. We think it's interesting, but we don't have the model.
Come and live
optimized.
in.
Yeah, exactly. He already has it. He has it.
I have it.
He has it.
I'm guessing now, you'd say with Live-In, part of how you're saving on cost is by having a community of guests who bring themselves together and sort of sort it out themselves, because they will share experiences with one another, which is what you're trying to, that's what I understand, you're part of what you're trying to create and build.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first one, but we're trying to grow it. But
Yep.
the idea behind it is the same, that you have that connectivity of experience. And I see that in terms of, I mean, it's not the most easiest city to do it in, Frankfurt. It just happened to be an opportunity. Happened to be a hotel that I used to run when I was running Meininger. It was available without the brand, and we got hold of it, done it there. Ideal city would be Hamburg or
And it's
Berlin,
also,
yeah,
it's a challenge of getting the real estate in what would be
Exactly.
classified as great lifestyle destinations, because classically you want to have them in neighbourhoods that have vibrancy and buzz, and it's quite difficult to find a property that will make an economy model.
we had the opening party, and some people are here who came for the opening party. You can see some of them in the audience, and they can give you their experience. Unbelievable how many young people came. This is a hotel right at the entrance of the Messe, and it was, we sort of,
As well.
it was packed with young people. I didn't know there were so many young people in Frankfurt who came to the party.
Free beer.
Yeah, it was because I think
Yeah,
one of my
Russian
friends,
wine.
two other friends were there for the party, and they stayed out longer than I was.
That's not
I
possible.
think Pravi is there. He can talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the question. For many people, sustainability is part of the lifestyle. How do you integrate this in your lifestyle program?
Did you hear the?
No.
Well,
How do you integrate sustainability in your lifestyle product? Because it's an important value.
Sustainability.
do you want to take it?
Yeah,
That's like a whole other session.
I mean, it all starts with
It
how
is,
you,
it
the
is so-
DNA. Like, for example, when we were refurbishing the hotel,
I did 3
we said we'll keep all the beds, which were already there. And, I mean, things like that. So you have to come from how you approach the topic, right? So that's in your mindset, then we told the designer, we're an interior designer, wanted to cut everything out and throw everything out. So no, keep the beds, you don't need to change the beds. So I mean, give an example of how we approached it from the point of view of sustainability, if you like. And the second thing is food. So we have a food concept where it's also very practical, where we actually have frozen food, which comes in from in a container, and we can keep that for 18 weeks and not throw it out if it's not used. But of course, we sell it quite quickly. But so basically, there's no food wastage when we use that concept. It's the same concept as Citizen M, as it happens.
I think
They
it's
tried it
important. I
out
think it's
first.
also just important across the entire industry. I think it touches every segment, every brand, and different ones have different focuses. There's a whole rule book and checklist, and different buildings have different possibilities. Different operating models have different opportunities. So happy to discuss it offline to give you further details.
And just with the statistic that 1/3 of the world's food is never eaten, the absolute first thing you have to attack is food waste, because that gives you the biggest return on your CO2 emission reduction. So I had to put my F&B hat on for a second.